All right. So that was a bit of a delay there. I apologize. But hey, we're back. Uh, welcome back to Storytime Saturdays. I am your intrepid, adventurous navigator of the unknown, your narrator, Fraggeth. And today I will be getting back into the swing of reading from Brigands of the Moon, the book of Greg Haljan. So we've gotten through part one of four, which took 2 weeks, and then there was the week off because I was having technical problems. Multiple technical problems, as it turned out. It wasn't any one source, but everything together basically made it so I could not do the stream last week, but that's fine. Um, and The first part was published in Astounding Stories of Super Science, not science fiction. Stories of Super Science, March of 1930. And now part two, which will probably be another 2 parts stream. So next week we'll do the second half of this one, um, assuming it's the same length, and I'm pretty sure it is. Which is from April of 1930. So again, these are old tales. It's an old tale, but it's fairly relatable and enjoyable. Uh, One of the things that I find fascinating about these is the priorities, what people wanted out of things in this stuff back then. So what the characters want is the uh, is there have been these radium mines found, radium ore. For those who recognize the term radium and wonder why they know what it is, but can't remember why they know the term but can't remember what it is, radium is a radioactive, haha, material, very commonly used or infamously used, I should say, for the glowing spots on certain watches and clocks. Um, Also used extensively in the radioactive testing work that folks like Madame Curie and co. were doing back around this same time. So this was popular science at that point. Obviously, there's stuff like anti-gravity in the spaceship that the characters are flying in, which is of course a complete impossibility as far as we are aware of the laws of physics, as it were. So, without much further ado, I'm going to get another sip of water here. It is, as they say, thirsty work. All right, so I now have to remember all the voices I did, which is going to be tricky. Um, but we will try. I can't remember what I had for the voice of Ob Han because he hasn't had much of a role up until now, of course. Just gonna skip ahead here real quick and just see how long it is. Let's see. Nope. That keeps going. Here we go. Actually, this one is a little shorter, I think. So we'll see. Got up to what was the last chapter here? As you can tell, I planned. I planned so far ahead. In intimate, mind-searing detail. Okay, this gets up to chapter 22. I think we're on 13, or is it 8? 13. We got up to 13, so we're on now chapter 14, I think. Okay. Have a little bit of a head cold. Not a head cold per se, just a stuffy head again. Mornings, I tell you. All right. So, as far as a brief recap of the plot thus far, I think the series is going to actually tell us. Yeah, it does a fair recap. But I'll get to that when I get to it. Basic recap of the most recent events where there has been a mighty ship uprising, a mutiny, sorry, where it seems that a large portion of the crew of the space vessel Planetara, on which events have been focused so far, was killed, with the exception of a few noted members, such as Greg Haljan and I believe the communications guy whose name eludes me at the moment. Snap is his nickname, maybe? Sure, could be. Um, uh, Greg Haljan developed an immense liking for this girl named Anita, who was the brother of somebody who he had been told to be suspicious of, vis-a-vis picking up on this secret radium mine on the moon. And she had died to all appearances, but then, miraculously, Phoenix like has risen, not from the dead, but actually disguised as her brother, um, and it's a little complicated. So, nothing at all soap operatic about this. No siree, Bob. No way. So yeah, I guess without further ado, mm, mm, good tea. Jeez Louise. Brigands of the Moon, the Book of Greg Haljan, Part 2 of a four-part novel, by Ray Cummings. Out of awful space tumbled the spaceship Planetara towards the moon, her officers dead, with bandits at her helm, and the controls out of order. My name, Greg Haljan. Age, 25 years. My occupation at the time my narrative begins, in 2075, was third officer of the interplanetary spaceship Planetara. Thus, I introduce myself to you, for this is a continuation of the book of Greg Haljan, and of necessity I am the chief actor therein. I shall recapitulate very briefly what has happened so far. Unscrupulous Martian brigands were scheming for Johnny Grantline's secret radium ore treasure, dug out of the moon and waiting there to be picked up by the Planetara on her return trip from Mars. The Planetara left, bound for Mars, some 10 days away. Suspicious interplanetary passengers were aboard: Miko and Moa, a brother and sister of Mars; Sir Arthur Coniston, a mysterious Englishman; Ob Hahn, a Venus mystic; and small, effeminate George Prince and his sister, Anita. Love, I think, was born instantly between Anita and me. I found all too soon that Miko, the sinister giant from Mars, also desired her. As we neared the moon, we received Grantline's secret message: "Stop for ore on your return voyage. Success beyond wildest hopes." But I soon discovered that an eavesdropper in an invisible cloak had overheard it. Soon afterwards, Miko accidentally murdered a person identified as Anita Prince. Then, in the confusion that resulted, Miko struck his great blow. The crew of the Planetara, secretly in his pay, rose up and killed the captain and all the officers but Snap Dean, the radio helio operator, and myself. I was besieged in the chart room. George Prince leapt in upon me, and put his arms around me. I looked at him closer, only to discover it was Anita, disguised as her brother. It was her brother, George, who had been killed. George had been in the brigands' confidence. Thus, Anita was able to spy for us. Quickly we plotted. I would surrender to her, Anita Prince, whom the Brigands thought was George Prince. Together we might possibly be able, with Snap's help, to turn the tide and reclaim the Planetara. I was taken to my stateroom and locked there until Miko the brigand leader should come to dispose of me. But I cared not what had happened. Anita was alive. Chapter 14. The Brigand Leader. The giant Miko stood confronting me. He slid my cubby door closed behind him. He stood with his head towering close against my ceiling. His cloak was discarded. In his leather clothes and with his clanking sword ornament, his aspect carried the swagger of a brigand of old. He was bareheaded. The light from one of my tubes fell upon his grinning, leering gray face. "So, Greg Haljan, you have come to your senses at last. You do not wish me to write my name upon your chest? I would not have done that to Dean. He forced me. Sit back." I had been on my bunk. I sank back at the gesture of his huge, hairy arm. His forearm was bare now. The sear of a burn on it was plain to be seen. He remarked my gaze. "True, you did that, Haljan, in Great New York, but I bear you no malice. I want to talk to you now." He cast about for a seat, and took the little stool which stood by my desk. His hand held a small cylinder of the Martian paralyzing ray. He rested it beside him on the desk. "Now we can talk." I remained silent, alert, yet my thoughts were whirling. Anita was alive, masquerading now as her brother. And, with the joy of it, came a shudder. Above everything, Miko must not know. "A great adventure we are upon, Haljan." My thoughts came back. Miko was talking with an assumption of friendly comradeship. "All is well, and we need you, as I have said before. I am no fool. I have been aware of everything that went on aboard this ship. You, of all the officers, are most clever at routine mathematics. Is that so?" "Perhaps," I said. "You are modest." He fumbled at a pocket of his jacket, produced a scroll sheaf. I recognized it. Blackstone's figures, the calculation Blackstone roughly made of the elements of the asteroid we had passed. "I am interested in these," Miko went on. "I want you to verify them. And this." He held up another scroll. "This is the calculation of our present position and our course. Han claims he is a navigator. We have set the ship's gravity plates. See, like this." He handed me the scrolls. He watched me keenly as I glanced over them. "Well?" I said. "You are sparing of words, Haljan. By the devils of the airways, I could make you talk. But I want to be friendly." I handed him back the scrolls. I stood up. I was almost within reach of his weapon, but with a sweep of his great arm he abruptly knocked me back to my bunk. "You dare?" Then he smiled. "Let us not come to blows." "No," I said. I returned his smile. In truth, physical violence could get me nothing in dealing with this fellow. I would have to try guile. And I saw now that his face was flushed and his eyes unnaturally bright. He had been drinking alkalite, not enough to befuddle him, but enough to make him triumphantly talkative. "Han may not be much of a mathematician," I suggested, "but there is your Sir Arthur Coniston." I managed a sarcastic grin. "Is that his name?" "Almost. Haljan, will you verify these figures?" "Yes. But why? Where are we going?" He laughed. "You are afraid I will not tell you. Why should I not? This great adventure of mine is progressing perfectly. A tremendous stake, Haljan. A hundred millions of dollars in gold leaf. There will be fabulous riches for us all when that radium ore is sold for 100 million in gold leaf. But where are we going? To that asteroid, he said abruptly. I must get rid of these passengers. I am no murderer. With half a dozen killings in the recent fight, this was hardly convincing. But he was obviously wholly seriously. But he was obviously wholly serious. He seemed to read my thoughts. I kill only when necessary. We will land upon the asteroid, a perfect place to maroon the passengers. Is it not so? I will give them the necessities of life. They will be able to signal. And in a month or so, when we are safely finished with our adventure, a police ship will no doubt rescue them. And then, from the asteroid, I suggested, we are going to the moon, Haljan. What a clever guesser you are. Coniston and Hahn are calculating our course, but I have no great confidence in them, and so I want you. You have me. Yes, I have you. I would have killed you long ago. I am an impulsive fellow, but my sister restrained me. He gazed at me slyly. Moa seems strangely to like you, Haljan. Thanks, I said. I'm flattered. She still hopes I may really win you to join us, he went on. Gold leaf is a wonderful thing. There would be plenty for you in this affair. And to be rich and have the love of a woman like Moa. He paused. I was trying cautiously to gauge him, to get from him all the information I could. I said, with another smile, This is premature to talk of Moa. I will help you chart your course. But this venture, as you call it, is dangerous. A police ship. There are not many, he declared. The chances of us encountering one is very slim. He grinned at me. You know that as well as I do. And we now have those code passwords. I forced Dean to tell me where he had hidden them. If we should be challenged, our password answer will relieve suspicion. The Planetara, I objected, being overdue at Ferrok Shan will cause alarm. You'll have a covey of patrol ships after you. That will be 2 weeks from now. He smiled. I have a ship of my own in Ferrok Shan. It lies there waiting now, manned and armed. I am hoping that, with Dean's help, we may be able to flash it a signal. It will join us on the moon. Fear not for the danger, Haljan. I have great interests allied with me in this thing. Plenty of money. We have planned carefully. He was idly fingering his cylinder. His gaze roved me as I sat docile on my bunk. Did you think George Prince was a leader of this? A mere boy. I engaged him a year ago. His knowledge of ores is valuable. My heart was pounding, but I strove not to show it. He went on calmly. I told you I am impulsive. Half a dozen times I have nearly killed George Prince, and he knows it. He frowned. I wish I had killed him instead of his sister. That was an error. There was a note of real concern in his voice. Did he love Anita Prince? It seemed so. He added, That is done. Nothing can change it. George Prince is helpful to me. Your friend Dean is another. I had trouble with him, but he is docile now. I said abruptly, I don't know whether your promise means anything or not, Miko, but George Prince said you would use no more torture. I won't. Not if you and Dean obey me. You tell Dean I have agreed to that. You say he gave you the code words we took from Johnson? Yes, there was a fool, that Johnson. You blame me, Haljan, for the killing of Captain Carter? You need not. Johnson offered to try and capture you, take you alive. He killed Carter because he was angry at him. A stupid, vengeful fool. He is dead, and I am glad of it. My mind was on Miko's plans. I ventured. This treasure on the moon. Did you say it was on the moon? Don't be an idiot, he retorted. I know as much about Grantline as you do. That's very little. Perhaps. Perhaps you know more, Miko. The moon is a big place. Where, for instance, is Grantline located? I held my breath. Would he tell me that? A score of questions, vague plans, were in my mind. How skilled at mathematics were these brigands? Miko, Han, Coniston. Could I fool them? If I could learn Grantline's location on the moon and keep the Planetara away from it, a pretended error of charting, time lost, and perhaps Snap could find an opportunity to signal Earth, get help. Miko answered my question as bluntly as I had asked it. I don't know where Grantline is located, but we will find out. He will not suspect the Planetara. When we get close to the moon, we will signal and ask him. We can trick him into telling us. You think I do not know what is on your mind, Haljan? There is a secret code of signals arranged between Dean and Grantline. I have forced Dean to confess it, without torture. Prince helped me in that. He persuaded Dean not to defy me. A very persuasive fellow, George Prince. More diplomatic than I am, I give him credit. I strove to hold my voice calm. If I should join you, Miko, my word, if I ever gave it, you would find dependable. I would say George Prince is very valuable to us. You should rein your temper. He is half your size. You might sometime, without intention, do him injury. He laughed. Ha! Moa says so, but have no fear. I was thinking, I persisted, I'd like to have a talk with George Prince. Ah, my pounding, tumultuous heart. But I was smiling calmly, and I tried to put into my voice a shrewd note of cupidity. I really know very little about this treasure, Miko. If there were a million or two of gold leaf in it for me... Perhaps there would be. I was thinking. Suppose you let me have a talk with Prince. I have some knowledge of radium ores. His skill and mine, a calculation of what Grantline's treasure may really be. You don't know. You are only assuming. I paused. Whatever may have been in Miko's mind, I cannot say. But abruptly he stood up. I had left my bunk, but he waved me back. Sit down. I am not like Moa. I would not trust you just because you protested you would be loyal. He picked up his cylinder. We will talk again. He gestured to the scrolls he had left upon my desk. Work on those. I will judge you by the results. He was no fool, this brigand leader. Yes, I agreed. You want a true course now to the asteroid? Yes, I will get rid of these passengers. Then we will plan further. Do your best, Haljan. No error. By the gods, I warn you, I can check up on you. I said meekly, Very well. But you ask Prince if he wants my calculations of Grantline's ore body. I shot Miko a foxy look as he stood by my door. I added, You think you're clever. There is plenty you don't know. Our first night out from Earth, Grantline's signals. Didn't it ever occur to you that I might have some figures on his treasure? It startled him. Where are they? I tapped my forehead. You don't suppose I was foolish enough to record them? You ask Prince if he wants to talk to me. A high thorium content in ore. You ask Prince. 100 millions or 200. It would make a big difference, Miko. I will think about it. He backed out and sealed the door upon me once again. But Anita did not come. I verified Han's figures, which were very nearly correct. I charted a course for the asteroid. It was almost the one which had been set. Coniston came for my results. I say, we are not so bad as navigators, are we? I think we're jolly good, considering our inexperience. Not bad at all, eh? No. I did not think it was wise to ask him about Prince. Are you hungry, Haljan? He demanded. Yes. A steward came with a meal. The saturnine Han stood at my door with a weapon upon me while I ate. They were taking no chances, and they were wise not to. The day passed. Day and night, all the same of aspect here in the starry vault of space. But with the ship's routine, it was day. And then another time of sleep. I slept, fitfully, worrying, trying to plan. Within a few hours we would be nearing the asteroid. The time of sleep was nearly past. My chronometer marked 5 a.m. of our original Earth starting time. The seal of my cubby door hissed. The door slowly opened. Anita! She stood there with her cloak around her. A distance away on the shadow-decked space, Coniston was loitering. Anita! I whispered it. Greg, dear. She turned and gestured to the watching brigand. I will not be long, Coniston. She came in and half closed the door upon us, leaving it open enough so that we could make sure that Coniston did not advance. I stepped back where he could not see us. Anita! She flung herself into my opened arms. Chapter 15. The Masquerader. A moment when beyond all thought of the nearby brigand, or the possibility of an eavesdropping ray trained now upon my little cubby. A moment while Anita and I held each other and whispered those things which could mean nothing to the world, but which were all the world to us. Then it was she whose wits brought us back from the shining fairyland of our love into the sinister reality of the Planetara. Greg, if they are listening. I pushed her away. This brave little masquerader. Not for my life or all the lives on the ship would I consciously have endangered her. But the oar, I said aloud. There was, in Grantline's message, see here, Prince. Coniston was too far away on the deck to hear us. Anita went to my door again and waved at him reassuringly. I put my ear to the door opening and listened at the space across the grid of the ventilator over my bunk. The hum of a vibration would have been audible at those 2 points, but there was nothing. It's all right, I whispered. Anita, not you who was killed. I can hardly realize it now. Not you whom they buried yesterday morning. We stood and whispered, and she clung to me, so small beside me. With the black robe thrown aside, it seemed that I could not miss the curves of her woman's figure. A dangerous game she was playing. Her hair had been cut short to the base of her neck, in the fashion of her dead brother. Her eyelashes had been clipped, the line of her brows altered. And now, in the light of my ray tube as it shone upon her earnest face, I could remark other changes. Glutz, the little beauty specialist, was in this secret. With plastic skill, he had altered the set of her jaw with his wax, put masculinity there. She was whispering, It was poor George whom Miko... Bleh. It was poor George whom Miko shot. I had now the true version of what had occurred. Miko had been forcing his wooing upon Anita. George Prince was a weakling whose only good quality was a love for his sister. Some years ago he had fallen into evil ways, been arrested, and then discharged from his position within the Federated Radium Corporation. He had taken up with evil companions in Great New York, mostly Martians. And Miko had met him. His technical knowledge, his training with the Federated Corporation, made him valuable to Miko's enterprise. And so Prince had joined the Brigands. Of all this, Anita had been unaware. She had never liked Miko, feared him, and it seemed that the Martian had some hold upon her brother, which puzzled and frightened Anita. Then Miko had fallen in love with her. George had not liked it. And that night on the Planetara, Miko had come and knocked upon Anita's door. Incautiously she opened it. He forced himself in. And when she repulsed him, struggled with him, George had been awakened. She was whispering to me now. My room was dark. We were all three struggling. George was holding me. The shot came, and I screamed. And Miko had fled, not knowing whom this shot had hit in the darkness. And when George died, Captain Carter wanted me to impersonate him. We planned it with Dr. Frank to try and learn what Miko and the others were doing, because I never knew that poor George had fallen into such evil things. I could only hold her thankfully in my arms. The lost what might have been seemed coming back to us. And they cut my hair, Greg, and Glutz altered my flate. Say that 7 times fast. And they cut my hair, Greg, and Glutz altered my face a little, and I did my best. But there was no time. It came upon us so quickly. And she whispered, But I love you, Greg. I want to be the first to say it. I love you. I love you. But we had the sanity to try and plan. Anita, when you go back, tell Miko we discussed radium ores. You have to be careful, clever. Don't say too much. Tell him we estimate the treasure at 130 millions. I told her what Miko had vouchsafed me of his plans. She knew all that. And Snap knew it. She had had a few moments alone with Snap. Gave me now a message from him. We'll pull out of this, Greg. With Snap, she had worked out a plan. There were Snap and Shack and Dud Ardley, upon whom we could doubtless depend. And Dr. Frank. Against us were Miko and his sister, and Coniston and Hahn. Of course, there were members of the crew, but we were numerically the stronger when it came to true leadership. Unarmed and guarded now, but if we could break loose, recapture the ship. I sat listening to Anita's eager whispers. It seemed feasible. Miko did not altogether trust George Prince. Anita was now unarmed. But I can make opportunity. I can get one of their ray cylinders and an invisible cloak equipment. That cloak. It had been hidden in Miko's room when Carter searched for it in A-20. Was now in the chart room by Johnson's body. It had been repaired now. Anita thought she could get possession of it. We worked out the details of the plan. Anita would arm herself and come and release me. Together, with a paralyzing ray, we could creep aboard the ship, overcome these brigands one by one. There were so few of the leaders. With them felled, and with us in control of the turret and the helio room, we could force the crew to stay at their posts. There were, Anita said, no navigators among Miko's crew. They would not dare oppose us. But it should be done at once, Anita. In a few hours we will be at the asteroid. Yes, I will go now, try and get the weapons. Where is Snap? Still in the helio room. One of the crew guards him. Coniston was roaming the ship. He was still loitering on the deck, watching our door. Hahn was in the turret. The morning watch of the crew were all at their posts in the hull corridors. The stewards were preparing a morning meal. There were 9 members of subordinates altogether, Anita had calculated. 6 of them were in Miko's pay. The other 3, our own men who had not been killed in the fighting, had joined the brigands. And Dr. Frank, Anita? He was in the lounge. All the passengers were herded there, with Miko and Moa alternating on guard. I will arrange it with Venza, Anita whispered swiftly. She will tell the others. Dr. Frank knows about it now. He thinks it can be done. The possibility of it swept me anew. The brigands were of necessity scattered singly about the ship. One by one, creeping under cover of an invisible cloak, I could fell them, and replace them without alarming the others. My thoughts leaped to it. We would strike down the guard in the helio room. Release Snap. At the turret, we could assail Han and replace him with Snap. Coniston's voice outside broke in upon us. Prince? He was coming forward. Anita stood in the doorway. I have the figures, Coniston. By God, this Haljan is with us. And clever. We think it will total 130 millions. What a stake! She whispered, Greg, dear, I'll be back soon. We can do it. Be ready. Anita, be careful of yourself. If they should suspect you... I'll be careful. In an hour, Greg, or less, I'll come back. All right, Coniston. Where is Miko? I want to see him. Stay where you are, Haljan. All in good time. Miko will trust you with your liberty. You'll be rich like us all, never fear. She swaggered out upon the deck, waved at the brigand, and banged my cubby door in my face. I sat upon my bunk, waiting. Would she come back? Would she be successful? Chapter 16. In the blue-lit corridor. She came. I suppose it was no more than an hour. It seemed an eternity of apprehension. There was the slight hissing of the seal of my door. The panel slid. I had leaped from my bunk where in the darkness I was lying tense. Prince? I did not dare say Anita. Greg. Her voice. My gaze swept the deck as the panel opened. Neither Coniston nor anyone else was in sight, save Anita's dark-robed figure which came into my room. You got it? I asked her in a low whisper. I held her for an instant, kissed her. But she pushed me away with quick hands. Greg, dear. She was breathless. My kisses and the tenseness of what lay before us were to blame. Greg, see, I have it. Give us a little light. We must hurry. In the blue dimness, I saw that she was holding one of the Martian cylinders. The smallest size. It would paralyze, but not kill. Only one, Anita? Yes. I had it before, but Miko took it from me. It was in his room. And this... the invisible cloak. We laid it on my grid, and I adjusted its mechanism. A cloak of the reflecting, absorbing variety. And there's a footnote here. The principle of this invisible cloak involves the use of an electronized fabric. All color is absorbed. The light rays reflected to the eye of the observer thus show an image of empty blackness. There is also created about the cloak a magnetic field which by natural laws bends the rays of light from the objects behind it. This principle of the natural bending of light when passing through a magnetic field was first recognized by Albert Einstein, a scientist of the 20th century. In the case of this invisible cloak, the bending light rays, by making visible what was behind the cloak's blackness, thus destroyed its solid black outline and gave a pseudo-invisibility, which was fairly effective under favorable conditions. I donned it and drew its hood and threw on the current. All right, Anita? Yes. Can you see me? No. She stepped back a foot or two further. Not from here. But you must not let anyone approach too close. Then she came forward, put out her hand, fumbled until she found me. It was our plan to have me follow her out. Anyone observing us would see only the robed figure of the supposed George Prince, and I would escape notice. The situation about the ship was almost unchanged. Anita had secured the weapon and the cloak and had slipped away to my cubby without being observed. You're sure of that? I think so, Greg. I was careful. Moa was now in the lounge, guarding the passengers. Han was asleep in the chart room. Coniston was in the turret. Coniston would be off duty presently, Anita said, with Han taking his place. There were lookouts in the forward and stern watchtowers, and a guard upon Snap in the helio room. Is he inside the room, Anita? Snap? Yes. No, the guard. No, he was sitting upon the spider bridge at the door. This was unfortunate. That guard could see all the deck clearly. He might be suspicious of George Prince wandering around. It would be difficult to get near enough to assail him. This cylinder, I knew, had an effective range of only some 20 feet. Anita and I were swiftly whispering. It was necessary now to decide exactly what we were to do. Once under observation outside, there must be no hesitation, no fumbling.
Coniston is sharpest, Greg. He will be the hardest to get near.
The language-spoken Englishman was the one Anita most feared. His alert eyes seemed to miss nothing. Perhaps he was suspicious of this George Prince. Anita thought so.
But where is Miko? I whispered.
The brigand leader had gone below a few moments ago, down into the hull corridor. Anita had seized the opportunity to come to me. "We can attack Hahn in the chart room first," I suggested, "and get the other weapons. Are they still there?"
Yes, but Greg, the forward deck is very bright.
We were approaching the asteroid. Already its light, like a brilliant moon, was brightening the forward deck space. It made me realize how much haste was necessary. We decided to go down into the hull corridors, locate Miko, fell him, and hide him. His non-appearance back on deck would very soon throw the others into confusion, especially now with our impending landing upon the asteroid. And under cover of this confusion we would try and release Snap. We had been arguing no more than a minute or two. We were ready. Anita slid my door wide. She stepped through it, with me soundlessly scurrying after her. The empty, silent deck was alternately dark with shadow patches and bright with blobs of starlight. A sheen of the sun's corona was mingled with it, and from forward came the radiance of the asteroid's mellow silver glow. Anita turned to seal my door. Within my faintly humming cloak, I stood beside her. Was I invisible in this light? Almost directly over us, close under the dome, the lookout sat in his little tower. He gazed down at Anita. Amidships, high over the cabin superstructure, the helio room hung dark and silent. The guard on its bridge was visible. He, too, looked down. A tense instant. Then I breathed again. There was no alarm. The two guards answered Anita's gesture. Anita said aloud into my empty cubby, "Miko will come for you presently, Haljan. He told me to tell you that he wants you at the turret controls to land us on the asteroid." She finished sealing my door and turned away, started forward along the deck. I followed. My steps were soundless in my elastic-bottomed shoes. Anita swaggered with a noisy tread. Near the door of the smoking room, a small inclined passage led downward. We went into it. The passage was dimly blue-lit. We descended its length, came to the main corridor, which ran the length of the hull. A vaulted metal passage, with doors to the control rooms opening from it. Dim lights showed at intervals. The humming of the ship was more apparent here. It drowned the slight humming of my cloak. I crept after Anita. My hand under the cloak clutched the ray weapon. A steward passed us. I shrank aside to avoid him. Anita spoke to him. "Where is Miko, Ellis?" "In the ventilator room, Mr. Prince. There was difficulty with the air renewal." Anita nodded and moved on. I could have felled that steward as he passed me. Oh, if only had how different. Uh, oh, if I only had how different things might have been. But it seemed needless. I let him go, and he turned into a nearby door which led to the galley. Anita moved forward. If we could come upon Miko alone. Abruptly she turned and whispered, "Greg, if other men are with him, I'll draw him away. You watch your chance." What little things may overthrow one's careful plans! Anita had not realized how close to her I was following, and her turning was so unexpected it caused me to collide with her sharply. "Oh!" she exclaimed it involuntarily. Her outflung hand had unwittingly gripped my wrist, caught the electrode there. The touch burned her and close-circuited my robe. There was a hiss. My current burned out the tiny fuses. My invisibility was gone. I stood, a tall, black-hooded figure, revealed to the gaze of anyone who might be near. The futile plans of humans! We had planned so carefully. Our calculations, our hopes of what we could do, came clattering now in a sudden wreckage around us. Anita, run! If I were seen with her, then her own disguise would probably be discovered. That, above everything else, would be disaster. Anita, get away from me! I must try it alone! I could hide somewhere, repair the cloak perhaps. Or, since now I was armed, why could I not boldly start an assault? Greg, we must get you back to your cubby. She was clinging to me in a panic. No, you run! Get away from me! Don't you understand? George Prince has no business here with me. They'd kill you. Or worse, Miko would discover it was Anita, not George Prince. Greg, let's get back to the deck. I pushed at her, both of us in sudden confusion. From behind me came a shout. That accursed steward! He had returned to investigate perhaps what George Prince was doing in this corridor. He heard our voices. His shout in the silence of the ship sounded horribly loud. The white-clothed shape of him, white-clothed shape of him was in the nearby doorway. He stood stricken in surprise at seeing me, and then turned to run. I fired my paralyzing cylinder through my cloak. Got him. He fell. I shoved Anita violently. Run! Tell Miko to come. Tell him you heard a shout. He won't suspect you. But Greg, you mustn't be found out. You're our only hope, Anita. I'll hide, fix the cloak, or get back to my cubby. We'll try it again. It decided her. She scurried down the corridor. I whirled the other way. The steward's shout might not have been heard. Then realization flashed to me. The steward would be revived. He was one of Miko's men. For 2 voyages he had been a spy upon the Planetara. He would be revived and tell what he had seen and heard. Anita's disguise would be revealed. A cold-blooded killing, I do protest, went against me. But it was necessary. I flung myself upon him. I beat his skull with the metal of my cylinder. I stood up. My hood had fallen back from my head. I wiped my bloody hands on my useless cloak. I had smashed the cylinder. Haljan! Anita's voice. A sharp note of horror and warning. I became aware that in the corridor, 40 feet down its dim length, Miko had appeared, with Anita behind him. His rifle bullet projector was leveled. It spat at me. But Anita had pulled his arm. The explosive report was sharply deafening in the confined space of the corridor. With a spurt of flame, the leaden pellets struck over my head against the vaulted ceiling. Isn't that really dangerous? You're in a spaceship. You're exposed to vacuum if you punch a hole in the exterior. Miko was struggling with Anita. Prince, you idiot! Miko, don't! It's Haljan! Don't kill him! The turmoil brought members of the crew. From the shadowed oval near me they came running. I flung the useless cylinder at them. But I was trapped in the narrow passage. I might have fought my way out. Or Miko might have shot me. But there was the danger that, in her horror, Anita would betray herself. I backed up against the wall. Don't kill me. See, I will not fight. I flung up my arms, and the crew, emboldened and courageous under Miko's gaze, leapt on me and bore me down. The futile plans of humans. Anita and I had planned so carefully, and in a few brief minutes of action, it had come only to this. Chapter 17. A Woman of Mars.
So, Greg Haljan, you are not as loyal as you pretend.
Miko was livid with suppressed anger. They had stripped the cloak from me and flung me back in my cubby. Miko was now confronting me. At the door, Moa stood watching, and Anita was behind her. I sat outwardly defiant and sullen on my bunk, but I was alert and tense, fearful still of what Anita's emotion might betray her into doing.
Not so loyal, Miko repeated. And a fool! Do you think I am such a child you can escape me?
He swung around.
How did he get out of here? Prince, you came in here.
My heart was wildly thumping. But Anita retorted with a touch of spirit. I came to tell him what you commanded, to check Han's latest figures, and to be ready to take the controls when we go into the asteroid's atmosphere.
Well, how did he get out?
How should I know? She parried. Little actress. Her spirit helped to allay my fear. She held her cloak close around her in the fashion they had come to expect from the George Prince who had just buried his sister. How should I know, Miko? I sealed his door.
But did you?
Of course he did, Moa put in. Ask your lookouts, said Anita. They saw me. I waved to them just as I sealed the door. I ventured. I've been taught to open doors. I managed a sly, lugubrious smile. I shall not try it again, Miko. Nothing had been said about my killing of the steward. I thanked my constellations now that he was dead. I shall not try it again, I repeated. A glance passed between Miko and his sister. Miko said abruptly,
You seem to realize that it is not my purpose to kill you, and you presume upon it.
I shall not again. I eyed Moa. She was gazing at me steadily. She said, Leave him with me, Miko. She smiled. Greg Haljan, we are no more than 20,000 miles from the asteroid now. The calculations for the calculations for retarding are now in operation. It was what had taken Miko below, that and trouble with the ventilating system, which was soon rectified. But the retarding of the ship's velocity when nearing a destination required accurate manipulation. These brigands were fearful of their own skill. That was obvious. It gave me confidence. I was really needed. They would not harm me. Except for Miko's impulsive temper, I was in no danger from them. Not now, certainly. Moa was saying, I think I may make you understand, Greg. We have tremendous riches within our grasp. I know it, I added with sudden thought, but there are many with whom to divide this treasure. Miko caught my intended implication.
By the infernal, this fellow may have felt he could seize the treasure for himself, because he is a navigator.
Moa said vehemently, Do not be an idiot, Greg. You could not do it. There will be fighting with Grantline. My purpose was accomplished. They seemed to see me a willing outlaw like themselves, as though it were a bond between us, and they could win me. Leave him with me, said Moa. Miko acquiesced.
For a few minutes only.
He proffered a heat ray cylinder, but she refused it. I am not afraid of him. Miko swung on me.
Within an hour we will be nearing the atmosphere. Will you take the controls?
Yes. He set his heavy jaw. His eyes bored into me.
You are a strange fellow, Haljan. I can't make you out. I am not angry now. Do you think, when I am deadly serious, that I mean what I say?
His calm words set a sudden shiver over me. I checked my smile. Yes, I said.
Well then, I will tell you this. Not for all of Prince's well-meaning interference or Moa's liking for you, or my own need of your skill will I tolerate more trouble from you. The next time, I will kill you. Do you believe me?
Yes.
That is all I want to say. You kill my men, and my sister says I must not hurt you. I am not a child to be ruled by a woman.
He held his huge fist before my face.
With these fingers I will twist your neck. Do you believe it?
Yes, I did indeed. He swung on his heel.
If Moa wants to try and put sense into your head, I hope she does. Bring him to the lounge when you are finished, Moa. Come, Prince. Han will need us.
Anita moved aside to let him through the door. I caught a glimpse of her set white face as she followed him down the deck. Then Moa's bulk blocked the doorway. She faced me.
Sit where you are, Greg.
She turned and closed the door upon us.
I am not afraid of you. Should I be?
No, I said. She came and sat down beside me.
If you should attempt to leave this room, the stern lookout has orders to bore you through.
I have no intention of leaving this room, I retorted. I do not want to commit suicide.
I thought you did. You seemed minded in such a fashion. Greg, why are you so foolish?
I remained silent.
Why? She demanded.
I said carefully, "This treasure, you are many who will divide it. You have all these men on the Planetara, and in Ferrok Shahn others, no doubt." I paused. Would she tell me? Could I make her talk of that other brigand ship which Miko had said was waiting on Mars? I wondered if he had been able to signal it. The distance from here to Mars was great, yet upon other voyages Snap's signals had gotten through. My heart sank at the thought. Our situation here was desperate enough. The passengers soon would be cast upon the asteroid. There would be left only Snap, Anita, and myself. We might recapture the ship, but I doubted it now. My thoughts were turning to our arrival upon the moon. We three might, perhaps, be able to thwart the attack upon Grantline, hold the brigands off until help from the Earth might come. But with another brigand ship, fully manned and armed, coming from Mars, the condition would be immeasurably worse. Grantline had some 20 men, and his camp, I knew, would be reasonably fortified. I knew, too, that Johnny Grantline would fight to his last man. Moa was saying,
I would like to tell you our plans, Greg.
Her gaze was on my face. Keen eyes, but they were luminous now, an emotion in them sweeping her. But outwardly she was calm, stern-lipped. "Well, why don't you tell me?" I said. "If I am to help you—"
Greg, I want you with us. Don't you understand? We are not many. My brother and I are guiding this affair. With your help, I would feel differently.
"The ship at Ferrok Shahn—" My fears were realized. She said,
I think our signals reached it. Dean tried, and Coniston was checking him.
"You think this ship is coming?
Yes,
Where will it join us?"
at the moon. We will be there in 30 hours.
"Your figures gave that,
Did they not, Greg?
"Yes. And the other ship, how fast is it?"
Quite fast. In 8 days, or 9 perhaps, it will reach the moon.
She seemed willing enough to talk. There was, indeed, no particular reason for reticence. I could not, she naturally felt, turn the knowledge to account. "Manned," I prompted.
About 40 men.
"And armed? Long-range projectors?"
You ask very avid questions, Greg.
"Why should I not? Don't you suppose I'm interested?" I touched her. "Moa, did it ever occur to you, if once you and Miko trusted me, which you don't, I might show more interest in joining you?" The look on her face emboldened me. "Did you ever think of that, Moa? And some arrangement for my share of this treasure? I'm not like Johnson, to be hired for 100 pounds of gold leaf."
Greg, I will see that you get your share. Riches for you. And me.
I was thinking, Moa, when we land at the moon tomorrow, where's our equipment? The moon, with its lack of atmosphere, needed special equipment. I'd never heard Carter mention what apparatus the Planetara was carrying. Moa laughed.
We have located air suits and helmets, a variety of suitable apparatus, Greg. But we are not foolish enough to leave Great New York on this voyage without our own arrangements. My brother and Coniston and Prince, all of us shipped crates of freight consigned to Ferrok Shan, and Rankin had special baggage marked theatrical apparatus.
I understood it now. These brigands had boarded the Planetara with their own moon equipment, disguised as freight and personal baggage, shipped in bond to be expected by the tax officials of Mars.
It is on board now. We will open it when we leave the asteroid, Greg. We are well equipped.
She bent toward me, and suddenly her long, lean fingers were gripping my shoulders.
Greg, look at me.
I gazed into her eyes. There was passion there, and her voice was suddenly intense.
Greg, I told you once a Martian girl goes after what she wants. It is you I want.
Not for me to play like a cat upon a woman's emotions. Moa, you flatter me.
I love you.
She held me off, gazing at me.
Greg.
I must have smiled, and abruptly she released me.
So you think it amusing?
No, but on Earth.
We are not on the Earth, nor am I of the Earth.
She was gauging me keenly. No note of pleading was in her voice, a stern authority, and the passion was swinging to anger.
I am like my brother. I do not understand you, Greg Haljan. Perhaps you think you are clever? It seems stupidity, the fatuousness of man.
Perhaps, I said. There was a moment of silence.
Greg, I said I loved you. Have you no answer?
No. In truth, I did not know what sort of answer it would be best to make. Whatever she must have read in my eyes, it stirred her to fury. Her fingers, with the strength of a man in them, dug into my shoulders. Her gaze searched me.
You think you love someone else? Is that it?
That was horribly startling, but she did not mean it just that way. She amended with caustic venom.
That little Anita Prince. You thought you loved her. Was that it?
No! But I hardly deceived her.
Sacred to her memory, her rat-like little face, soft voice like a purring, sniveling cat. Is that what you are remembering, Greg Haljan?
She sneered. I tried to laugh. What nonsense!
Is it? Then why are you so cold under my touch? Am I, a girl descended from the Martian flame workers, impotent now to awaken a man?
A woman scorned. In all the universe there could be no more dangerous an enemy. An incredible venom shot from her eyes.
That miserable mouse-like creature. Well for her that my brother killed her.
It struck me cold. If Anita was unmasked beyond all the menace of Miko's wooing, I knew that the venom of Moa's jealousy was a greater danger. I said sharply, "Don't be simple, Moa." I shook off her grip. "You imagine too much. You forget that I am a man of the Earth, and you a girl of Mars."
Is that the reason why we should not love?
No, but our instincts are different. Men of the Earth are born to the chase. I was smiling. With thought of Anita's danger, I could find it readily in my heart to dupe this Amazon. Give me time, Moa. You attract me.
You lie.
Do you think so? I gripped her arm with all the power of my fingers. It must have hurt her, but she gave no sign. Her gaze clung to me steadily.
I don't know what to think, Greg Haljan.
I held my grip. Think what you like.
Men of Earth have been known to kill the thing they love. You want me to fear you? Perhaps. She smiled scornfully. That is absurd. I released her. I said earnestly, I want you to realize that if you treat me fairly, I can be of great advantage to this venture. There will be fighting. I am fearless. Her venomous expression was softening. I think that is true, Greg. And you need my navigating skill. Even now I should be in the turret. I stood up. I half expected she would stop me, but she did not. I added, Shall we go? She stood beside me. Her height brought her face level with mine. I think you will cause no more trouble, Greg? Of course not. I'm not wholly witless. You have been. Well, that is over. I hesitated. Then I added, A man of Earth does not yield to love when there is work to do. This treasure. I think that of everything I said, this last most convinced her. She interrupted. That I understand. Her eyes were smoldering. When it is over, when we are rich, then I will claim you, Greg. She turned from me. Are you ready? Yes. No. I must get that sheet of Han's last figures. Are they checked? Yes. I picked the sheet up from my desk. Han is fairly accurate, Moa. A fool, nevertheless. An apprehensive fool. A comradeship seemed coming between us. It was my purpose to establish it. Are we going to maroon Dr. Frank with the passengers? I asked. Yes. But he may be of use to us. I wanted Dr. Frank kept aboard. I still felt that there was a chance for us to recapture the ship. But Moa shook her head decisively. My brother has decided not. We will be well rid of Dr. Frank. Are you ready, Greg? Yes. She opened the door. Her gesture reassured the lookout, who was alertly watching the stern watchtower. Come, Greg. I stepped out and followed her forward along the deck, which was now bright with the radiance of the nearby asteroid. Chapter 18. Whoops. Chapter 18. Marooned on an Asteroid. A fair little world. I had thought so before, and I thought so now as I gazed at the asteroid hanging so close before our bow. A huge, thin crescent, with the sun off to one side behind it. A silver crescent tinged with red. From this near viewpoint, all of the little globe's disk was visible. The shadowed portion lay dimly red, mysteriously. The sunlit crescent, widening visibly as we approached, was gleaming silver. Inky moon-like shadows in the hollows, brilliant light upon the mountain heights. The seas lay in gray patches. The convexity of the disk was sharply defined. So small a world. Fair and beautiful, shrouded with clouded areas. Where's Miko? In the lounge, Greg. Can we stop there? Moa turned into the lounge archway. Strange, tense scene. I saw Anita at once. Her robed figure lurked in an inconspicuous corner. Her eyes were upon me as Moa and I entered, but she did not move. The 30-odd passengers were huddled in a group. Solemn, white-faced men, frightened women. Some of them were sobbing. One Earth woman, a young widow, sat holding her little girl and wailing with uncontrolled hysteria. The child knew me. As I appeared now, with my gold-laced white coat over my shoulder, the little child seemed to see in my uniform a mark of authority. She left her mother and ran to me.
You, please, will you help us? My mom's is crying.
I sent her gently back, but there came upon me a compassion for these innocent passengers, fated to have embarked upon this ill-starred voyage. Herded here in this cabin, with brigands like pirates of old guarding them, waiting now to be marooned on an uninhabited asteroid roaming in space. A sense of responsibility swept me. I swung upon Miko. He stood with a nonchalant grace, lounging against the wall with a cylinder dangling in his hand. He anticipated me.
So, Haljan, she put some sense into your head. No more trouble? Then get into the turret. Moa, stay there with him. Send Han here. Where is that ass Coniston? We will be in the atmosphere shortly.
I said, "No more trouble from me, Miko. But these passengers, what preparation are you making for them on the asteroid?" He stared in surprise. Then he laughed.
I am no murderer. The crew is preparing food, all we can spare, and tools. They can build themselves shelter. They will be picked up in a few weeks.
Dr. Frank was here. I caught his gaze, but he did not speak. On the lounge couches there still lay the quarter-score bodies. Rankin, who had been killed by Blackstone in the fight, a man passenger killed, a woman, and a man wounded. Miko added,
Dr. Frank will take his medical supplies. He will care for the wounded. There are other bodies among the crew.
His gesture was deprecating.
I have not buried them. We will put them ashore. Easier that way.
The passengers were all eyeing me. I said, "You have nothing to fear. I will guarantee you the best equipment we can spare. You will give them apparatus with which to signal?" I demanded of Miko.
Yes, get to the turret.
I turned away, with Moa after me. Again the little girl ran forward.
Come, speak to my mom. She is crying.
It was across the cabin from Miko. Coniston had appeared from the deck. It created a slight diversion. He joined Miko. "Wait," I said to Moa. "She's afraid of you. This is humanity." I pushed Moa back. I followed the child. I had seen that Venza was sitting with the child's weeping mother. This was a ruse to get word with me. I stood before the terrified woman while the little girl clung to my legs. I said gently, "Don't be so frightened. Dr. Frank will take care of you. There is no danger. You'll be safer on the asteroid than here on the ship." I leaned down and touched her shoulder. "There is no danger." I was between Venza and the open cabin. Venza whispered swiftly,
When we're landing, Greg, I want you to make a commotion. Anything. Just as the women passengers go ashore.
"Why? No, of course you'll have food, Mrs. Francis." "Why? No, of course you'll have food, Mrs. Francis."
Never mind. An instant. Just confusion. Go, Greg. Don't speak now.
I raised the child. "You take care of Mother." I kissed her. From across the cabin, Miko's sardonic voice made me turn.
Touching sentimentality, Haljan. Get to your post in the turret.
His rasping note of annoyance brooked no delay. I set the child down. I said, "I will land us in an hour. Depend on it." Han was at the controls when Moa and I reached the turret.
You will land us safely, Haljan?
He demanded anxiously. I pushed him away. "Miko wants you in the lounge."
You take command here?
"Of course, Han. I am no more anxious for a crash than you." He sighed with relief.
Huh. That is true. I am no expert on atmospheric entry, Haljan. Nor Coniston, nor Miko.
"Have no fear. Sit down, Moa." I waved to the lookout in the forward watchtower and got his routine gesture. I rang the corridor bells, and the normal signals came promptly back. "It's correct, Han. Get away with you." I called after him. "Tell Miko that things are all right here." Han's small figure, lithe as a leopard in his tight-fitting trousers and jacket with his robe now discarded, went swiftly down the spider incline and across the deck. "Moa, where's Snap?" "By the infernal if he's been injured." Up on the helio room bridge, the brigand guard still sat. Then I saw that Snap was out there sitting with him. I waved from the turret window, and Snap's cheery gesture answered me. His voice carried down through the silver moonlight.
"Land us safely, Greg. These weird amateur navigators."
Within the hour, I had us dropping into the asteroid's atmosphere. The ship heated steadily. The pressure went up. It kept me busy with the instruments and the calculations, but my signals were always promptly answered from below. The brigand crew did its part efficiently. At 150,000 feet, I shifted the gravity plates to the landing combinations and started the electronic engines.
All safe, Greg?
Moa sat at my elbow. Her eyes, with what seemed a glow of admiration in them, followed my busy routine activities. "Yes, the crew works well." The electronic streams flowed out like a rocket tail behind us. The Planetara caught their impetus. In the rarefied air, our bow lifted slightly, like a ship riding a gentle groundswell. At 100,000 feet, we sailed gently forward, hull down to the asteroid's surface, cruising to seek a landing space. A little sea was now beneath us. A shadowed sea, deep purple in the night down here. Occasional green verdured islands showed, with the lines of white surf marking them. Beyond the sea, a curving coastline was visible, rocky headlines behind which mountain foothills rose in serrated, verdured ranks. The sunlight edged the distant mountains, and presently this rapidly turning little world brought the sunlight forward. It was day beneath us. We slid gently downward. 30,000 feet now, above a sparkling blue ocean. The coastline was just ahead, green with a lush tropical vegetation. Giant trees, huge-leaved. Long dangling vines. Air plants with giant pods and vivid orchid-like blossoms. I sat at the turret window, staring through my glasses. A fair little world, yet obviously uninhabited. I could fancy that all this was newly sprung vegetation. This asteroid had whirled in from the cold of the interplanetary space far outside our solar system. A few years ago, as time might be measured astronomically, it was no more than yesterday, this fair landscape was congealed white and bleak, with a sweep of glacial ice. But the seeds of life miraculously were here. The miracle of life. Under the warming, germinating sunlight, the verdure sprung. So I guess the implication there is it's actually a very old body, but, you know, filled with plant life. How that happened without a major... Never mind. Doesn't matter.
Can you find landing space, Greg?
Moa's question brought back my wandering fancies. I saw an upland glade, a level spread of ferns with the forest banked around it. A cliff height nearby, frowning down at the sea. "Yes, I can land us there." I showed her through the glasses. I rang the sirens, and we spiraled, descending further. The mountain tops were now close beneath us. Clouds were overhead, white masses with blue sky behind them. A day of brilliant sunlight. But soon, with our forward cruising, it was night. The sunlight dropped beneath the sharply convex horizon. The sea and the land went purple. A night of brilliant stars. The earth was a blazing blue-red point of light. The heavens visibly were revolving. In an hour or so it would be daylight again. On the forward deck now Coniston had appeared, commanding half a dozen of the crew. They were carrying up caskets of food and the equipment which was to be given the marooned passengers, and making ready the disembarking incline, loosening the seals of the side dome windows. Sternward, on the deck, by the lounge oval, I could see Miko standing, and occasionally the roar of his voice at the passengers sounded. My vagrant thoughts flung back into Earth's history. Like this, ancient travelers of the surface of the sea were herded by pirates to walk the plank, or put ashore, marooned upon some fair desert island of the tropic Spanish main. Han came mounting our turret incline. "All is well, Gregg Haljan."
Get to your work, Moa told him sharply. We land in an hour quadrant.
He retreated, joining the bustle and confusion which now was beginning on the deck. It struck me, could I turn that confusion to account? Would it be possible, now at the last moment, to attack these brigands? Snap still sat outside the helio room doorway, but his guard was alert, with upraised projector. And that guard, I saw, in his position high amidships, commanded all the deck. And I saw, too, as the passengers now were herded in a line from the lounge oval, that Miko had roped and bound all of the men, and a clanking chain connected them. They came like a line of convicts, marching forward, and stopped on the open deck space near the base of the turret. Dr. Frank's grim face gazed up at me. Miko ordered the women and children in a group beside the chained men. His words to them reached me.
"You are in no danger. When we land, be careful. You will find gravity very different. This is a very small world."
I flung on the landing lights. The deck glowed with the blue radiance. The search beams shot down beside our hull. We hung now 1,000 feet above the forest glade. I cut off the electronic streams. We poised, with the gravity plates set at normal, and only a gentle night breeze to give us a slight side drift. This I could control with the lateral propeller rudders. For all my busy landing routine, my mind was on other things. Venza's swift words back there in the lounge. I was to create a commotion while the passengers were landing. Why? Had she and Dr. Frank, perhaps, some last-minute, desperate purposes? I determined I would do what she said. Shout or misorder the lights. That would be easy. But to what advantage? I was glad it was night. I had, indeed, calculated our descent so that the landing would be in darkness. But to what purpose? These brigands were very alert. There was nothing I could think of to do which would avail us anything more than a possible swift death under Miko's anger.
Well done, Gregg, said Moa.
I cut off the last of the propellers. With scarcely a perceptible jar, the Planetara grounded, rose like a feather, and settled to rest in the glade. The deep purple night with stars overhead was around us. I hissed out our interior air through the dome and the hull ports, and admitted the night air of the asteroid. My calculations, of necessity mere mathematical approximations, proved fairly accurate. In temperature and pressure there was no radical change as the dome windows slid back. We had landed. Whatever Venza's purpose, her moment was at hand. I was tense. But I was aware also that beside me Moa was very alert. I had thought her unarmed. She was not. She sat back from me. In her hand was a small, thin knife blade. She murmured tensely,
"You have done your part, Gregg. Well and skillfully done. Now we will sit here quietly and watch them land."
Snap's guard was standing, keenly watching. The lookouts in the forward and stern towers were also armed. I could see them both gazing keenly down at the confusion of the blue-lit deck. The incline went over the hull side and touched the ground.
"Enough!" Miko roared. "The men first. Han, move the women back. Coniston, pile those caskets to the side. Get out of the way, Prince."
Anita was down there. I saw her at the edge of the group of women. Venza was near her. Miko shoved her.
Get out of the way, Prince. You can help Coniston. Have the things ready to throw off.
5 of the Stewart crew were at the head of the incline. Miko shouted up at me.
Haljan, hold our shipboard gravity normal.
Yes, I responded. I had done so. Our magnetizers had been adjusted to the shifting calculations of our landing. They were holding now at intensities, so that upon the Planetara no change from fairly normal Earth gravity was apparent. I rang a tentative inquiry signal. The operator in the hull magnetizer control answered that he was at his post. The line of men were first to descend. Dr. Frank led them. He flashed a look of farewell up at me and Snap as he went down the incline with the chained men passengers after him. Motley procession. 20-odd disheveled, half-clothed men of 3 worlds. The changing, lightning gravity of the incline caught them. Dr. Frank bounded up to the rail under the impetus of his step, caught and held himself, drew himself back. The line swayed. In the dim, blue-lit glare it seemed unreal, crazy, a grotesque dream of men descending a plank. They reached the forest glade, stood swaying, afraid at first to move. The purple night crowded them. They stood gazing at this strange world, their new prison.
Now the women.
Miko was shoving the women to the head of the incline. I could feel Moa's steady gaze upon me. Her knife blade gleamed in the turret light. She murmured again. "In a few minutes you can ring us away, Greg." I felt like an actor awaiting his cue in the wings of some turgid drama, the plot of which he did not know. Venza was near the head of the incline. Some of the women and children were on it. A woman screamed. Her child had slipped from her hand, bounded up over the rail, and fallen. Hardly fallen, floated down to the ground, with flailing arms and legs, landing in the dark ferns, unharmed. Its terrified wail came up. There was a confusion on the incline. Venza, still on the deck, seemed to send a look of appeal to the turret. My cue? I slid my hand to the light switchboard. It was near my knees. I pulled a switch. The blue-lit deck beneath the turret went dark. I recall an instant of horrible, tense silence, and in the gloom beside me I was aware of Moa moving. I felt a thrill of instinctive fear. Would she plunge that knife into me? The silence of the darkened deck was broken with a confusion of sounds. A babble of voices. A woman passenger's scream. Shuffling of feet. And above it all, Miko's roar.
Stand quiet, everyone. No movement.
On the descending incline there was chaos. The disembarking women were clinging to the gangrail. Some of them had evidently surged over it and fallen. Down on the ground in the purple-shadowed starlight I could vaguely see the chained line of men. They too were in confusion, trying to shove themselves toward the fallen women. Miko roared.
Light those tubes! Greg Haljan! By the almighty Moa, are you up there? What is wrong? The light tubes!
Dark drama of unknown plot. Sorry. Sorry. Dark drama of unknown plot. I wonder if I should try and leave the turret. Where was Anita? She had been down there on the deck when I flung out the lights. I think 20 seconds would have covered it all. I had not moved. I thought, is Snap concerned with this? Moa's knife could have stabbed me. I felt her lunge against me, and suddenly I was gripping her, twisting her wrist. But she flung the knife away. Her strength was almost the equal of my own. Her hand went for my throat, and with the other hand she was fumbling. The deck sprang abruptly into light again. Moa had found the switch and threw it back. Greg! She fought me as I tried to reach the switch. I saw down on the deck Miko gazing up at us. Moa panted,
Greg, stop! If he sees you doing this, he'll kill you!
The scene down there was almost unchanged. I had answered my cue. To what purpose? I saw Anita near Miko. The last of the women were on the plank. I had stopped struggling with Moa. She sat back, panting. And then she called.
Sorry, Miko. It will not happen again.
Miko was in a towering rage. But he was too busy to bother with me. His anger swung upon those nearest him. He shoved the last of the women violently at the incline. She bounded over. Her body, with the gravity pull of only a few earth pounds, sailed in an arc and dropped to the sward near the swaying line of men. Miko swung back.
Get out of my way!
A sweep of his huge arm knocked Anita sidewise.
Prince, damn you, help with those boxes!
The frightened stewards were lifting the boxes, square metal storage chests each as long as a man, packed with food, tools, and equipment.
Here, get out of my way, all of you!
My breath came again. Anita nimbly retreated before Miko's angry rush. He dashed at the stewards. 3 of them held a box. He took it from them, raised it at the top of the incline, poised it over his head an instant, with his massive arms like gray pillars beneath it, and flung it. The box catapulted, dropped. Then, passing the Planetara's gravity area, it sailed in a long, flat arc over the forest glade and crashed into the purple underbrush.
Give me another!
The stewards pushed another at him. Like an angry titan he flung it. And another. One by one the chests sailed out and crashed.
There is your food. Go pick it up. Haljan, make ready to ring us away.
On the deck lay the dead body of Rance Rankin, which the stewards had carried out. Miko seized it, flung it.
There, go to your last resting place.
And the other bodies. Balk Blackstone, Captain Carter, Johnson. Miko flung them. And the course masters and those of our crew who had been killed. The stewards appeared with them. Miko unceremoniously cast them off. The passengers were all on the ground now. It was dim down there. I tried to distinguish Venza, but I could not. I could see Dr. Frank's figure at the end of the chained line of men. The passengers were gazing in horror at the bodies hurtling over them.
Ready, Haljan?
Moa prompted me.
Tell him yes.
I called, yes. Had Venza failed in her unknown purpose? It seemed so. On the helio room bridge, Snap and his guards stood like silent statues in the blue-lit gloom. The disembarkation was over.
Close the ports.
The incline came folding up with a clatter. The port and dome windows slid closed. Moa hissed against my ear.
If you want life, Greg Haljan, you will start your duties.
Venza had failed. Whatever it was, it had come to nothing. Down in the purple forest, disconnected now from the ship, the last of our friends stood marooned. I could distinguish them through the blur of the closed dome. Only a swaying, huddled group was visible. But my fancy pictured this last sight of them. Dr. Frank, Venza, Shack, and Dud Ardley. They were gone. They were gone. There were left only Snap, Anita, and myself. I was mechanically ringing us away. I heard my sirens sounding below, with answering clangs here in the turret. The Planetara's respiratory controls started. The pressure equalizers began operating, and the gravity plates shifted into lifting combinations. The ship was hissing and quivering with it, combined with the grating of the last of the dome ports. And Miko's command,
Lift, Haljan.
Han had been mingled with the confusion of the deck, although I had hardly noticed him. Coniston had remained below, with the crew answering my signals. Han stood now with Miko, gazing down through a deck window. Anita was alone at another.
Lift, Haljan.
I lifted us gently, bow first, with a repulsion of the bow plates, and started the central electronic engine. Its thrust from our stern moved us diagonally over the purple forest trees. The glade slid downward and away. I caught a last vague glimpse of the huddled group of marooned passengers, staring up at us, left to their fate, alone on this deserted little world. With the three engines going, we slid smoothly upward. The forest dropped, a purple spread of treetops, edged with starlight and earthlight. The sharply curving horizon seemed following us up. I swung on all the power. We mounted at a 40-degree angle, slowly circling, with a bank of clouds over us to the side and the shining little sea beneath.
Very good, Greg.
In the turret light, Moa's eyes blazed at me.
I do not know what you meant by darkening the deck lights.
Her fingers dug at my shoulders.
I will tell my brother it was an error.
I said, "An error. Yes."
An error? I do not know what it was, but you have me to deal with now. You understand? I will tell my brother so. You said, "On Earth a man may kill the thing he loves." A woman of Mars may do that. Beware of me, Greg Haljan.
Her passion-filled eyes bored into me. Love? Hate? The venom of a woman scorned. A mingling of turgid emotions. I twisted away from her grip and ignored her. She sat back, silently watching my busy activities. The calculations of the shifting conditions of gravity, pressures, temperatures. A checking of the score or more of instruments on the board before me. Mechanical routine. My mind went back to Venza, back there on the asteroid. The wandering little world was already shrinking to a convex surface beneath us. Venza, with her last unknown play, gone to failure. Had I failed my cue? Whatever my part, it seemed now that I must have horribly misacted it. The crescent Earth was presently swinging over our bow. We rocketed out of the asteroid's shadow. The glowing, flaming sun appeared, making a crescent of the Earth. With the glass I could see our tiny moon, visually seeming to hug the limb of its parent Earth. We were away upon our course for the moon. My mind flung ahead. Grantline with his treasure, unsuspecting this brigand ship. And suddenly, beyond all thought of Grantline and his treasure, there came to me a fear for Anita. In God's truth, I had been, so far, a very stumbling, inept champion, doomed to failure with everything I tried. It swept me, so that I cursed my own incapacity. Why had I not contrived to have Anita desert at the asteroid? Would it not have been far better for her there, taking her chance for rescue with Dr. Frank, Venza, and the others? But no. I had, like an inept fool, never thought of that. I had left her here, on board, at the mercy of these outlaws. And I swore now that, beyond everything, I would protect her. Futile oath. If I could have seen ahead a few hours. But I sensed the catastrophe. There was a shudder within me as I sat in that turret, docilely guiding us out through the asteroid's atmosphere, heading us upon our course for the moon. And with that, I am going to call it for today. Um, and I'll do the second half next week. Um, I'm going to say a lot because my brain is not firing on all cylinders at the moment. Um, so I do this stream every week, barring massive technological failure like last week. Every Saturday at about noon Eastern Standard Time. Um, there we go again. I also have streams on both Monday and Wednesday. On Mondays, I do a Mecha Monday stream where I do something mecha related or giant robot adjacent.
And every Wednesday, I do a Warframe Wednesday stream where I do some Warframe stuff for a couple hours. Always at about noon Eastern Standard Time, which is the dayish to the morning. Beyond that, I do stream to multiple platforms, Twitch, Facebook, and Mixer. Normally, I stream towards YouTube, but right now there are some issues going on that front, so I'm just uploading them there. Admittedly, I'm like a week and a half to 2 weeks out of date on that, but I'll get that up either today or tomorrow. Yeah, hope folks enjoyed, and I do try to do this every week. Boom, 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 boom. Yeah, that's about it. Uh, Hope to see you next time, and gosh, have a great week. Stay safe out there, and enjoy life. Thanks again.